Broadcasting live from the Graven Cairns on the plain of Lorwyn? Shadowmoor?
Yeah,
Is Shadowmoor or...
So Shadowmoor is like what Lorwyn turns into every time someone casts Scapeshift.
Right, okay. Well, then
But
from
Lorwyn came first, I think, so.
Yeah, I don't know if the proper name is Lorwyn or Shadowmoor. Anyway, I'm sure it's all the 400 comments now being like, well, actually. Exactly. Anyway, these Graven Cairns seem to be on the plane of Dominaria, considering they reference Caer Sangir.
Right. Weird.
Maybe they're
never
interplanar.
put that together.
Anywho.
If you'll recall, last week I called myself out for not knowing anything about lore.
Here we are. Anyway, broadcasting
There's also
live.
the Zendikar
or Zendikar. That's the real Graven Cairns.
We're
That's gotta
in
be
trouble
my least
now.
favorite one. I don't know. Can you just burn a Hedron? Does that even work?
I mean, we can try.
Right.
Ask Tuk Tuk, I guess.
I don't want to have a conversation with Tuk Tuk right now.
Yeah, he seems ornery. Anyway, this is
podcast
TapTapConcede.
called? Good.
I'm Cameron.
And I'm Nelson.
And we're going to be talking to you today about the challenges we set for ourselves when we're playing Magic the Gathering. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about my Highlander deck as a way of kind of like getting a grapple on that conversation, I think. But before we get into it, this podcast is brought to you by the kind people over at Card Kingdom. cardkingdom.com/LRR. If you put in that affiliate code, it will let you know that we sent you, and they will hopefully continue to endorse our head noises that we make into microphones.
And also by Sin Prodder, putting the prod back in Prodcast.
Ooh, I like that. Also, if you decide to order anything from Card Kingdom, such as singles, or if you live in the United States, sealed product, and you put in the additional comment field, LoadingReadyRun sent me button, please, they will send you a little 1-inch button, which actually I don't know what it says right now.
But recently it's featured Double Block and Pray.
I love Double Block and Pray.
That's a great one. Yeah. I did that recently and then lost.
Yeah, I got somebody with it last night.
Nice.
It always feels good when somebody double blocks and prays and you're just like
Colossus?
Yeah, Colossus.
Sometimes you look back in your games and you're like, if I played any way differently, would I have not died to that Colossus? And you're like, no.
Yeah. Or like the Fairy.
The Duelist.
Yeah, Fairy Duelist.
Colossus mocks you less. It just kills you. Fairy is like, you fell for it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Anywho, this podcast is also brought to you by you, the viewer, over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun.
We saw what you did.
Your very generous support of us directly makes this podcast possible, so way to go.
I guess.
Pays for our utilities and our beautiful new set, and also our money.
Look, without you, we couldn't keep the lights on, all right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
You're responsible. Shall we crack a pack, Nelson?
Let's crack a pack, please.
Generate me a random number.
I'm trying to be as Vanna White as possible with this dice. Ooh. Channeling my inner Vanna. 19. Count all of the packs.
4, 5. I mean, we should just have 20 in here.
There's exactly 20 in there, actually.
Well then.
Yeah, I cheated for you.
Wham!
Ooh, my favorite set.
Oath of the Gatewatch.
Do you want to open it? Or
yeah, I would love to open it. This one was sent to us by Cassie13, presumably through mail time, but it has a very lovely little label with a butterfly.
That's adorable, Cassie. Thanks.
Much appreciated. So this is also a Chandra pack. What are we looking for in here?
Just Essence Depleter every time.
Essence Depleter? That was the blue-black Eldrazi, or was that the red-black?
I'm always trying to remember correctly. Hopefully, the one I'm always looking for is just 1 black and 2 generic for a 2/3 Eldrazi creature that has like 1 and a colorless, like a generic and a colorless, to make your opponent lose a life and you gain a life. So maybe that's Essence Depleter. That's also a good one. Same mana cost as this.
There we go. Kozilek Shrieker. For 2 and a black, you get an Eldrazi drone creature. It's a 3/2. It has Devoid, as all the Eldrazi did in this set, which was a weird mechanic.
Yeah, Devoid mostly just... like the way I remember it is that it resulted in a lot of rules calls of like people being told to like find a colorless thing or find a creature of a certain color, and then they found one of these or a spell of a certain color, and then they're like 2 turns pass and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I cheated.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like,
we
oops,
actually
judge,
completely,
sorry.
can we roll it back?
Yeah, and then you look and you just feel bad for everyone, you know?
Yeah, and this one also has Ghost Fire Breathing, I guess. Kozilek Shrieker for 1 colorless mana, specifically colorless mana. Kozilek Shrieker gets +1/+0 and gains menace until end of turn.
Yeah, pretty strong card. These they're giving us a lot of 3/2 menace for 3s, and even in Rivals of Ixalan, that 2/1 menace for 2 is pretty solid.
Yeah, they get work done. Next up, we have Isolation Zone.
Oops.
2 and 2 white for an enchantment. This is the O-ring analog for this set. When Isolation Zone enters the battlefield, exile target creature or enchantment an opponent controls until Isolation Zone leaves the battlefield.
Really good.
Yep.
Really good card. O-ring. They don't give us O-rings too much anymore. They almost always make them uncommon now. Yeah.
Yeah, especially for that one being uncommon. Eldrazi Aggressor. 2 and a red, you get a 2/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid, and Eldrazi Aggressor has haste as long as you control another colorless creature. It always, I guess, I remember smashing on turn 3 with this.
Yeah, there was a black-red aggressive Eldrazi deck, or you could build it Jund or green-red, and yeah, sometimes this guy would play in those.
Yeah,
it's obviously not or not very exciting as a top deck, but if you put that deck together, you could get work done, as you're saying.
We have Kozilek's Translator, 4 and a black for a 3/5 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Pay 1 life. Add colorless mana to your mana pool. Activate this ability only once each turn. I love the artwork in this.
Yeah, I'm just lost in the art right now.
Yeah, leaving behind that trail of the Kozilek bismuth crystal.
Right.
Kind of
sort of reshaping the pattern of Zendikar.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
they slither across it.
Yeah, like Ulamog's brood left ash or just dust in their wake, and
Right.
Kozilek's brood kind of reassemble everything into just this they have 2 very different ways of homogenizing a plane.
Right.
Right.
As represented on the basic art for Wastes, right?
Yeah. Anyway, this
Pretty cool. This card was definitely a playable.
Yeah,
like, this
I mean,
is a pretty
it's a
cool
filter
ability
card.
for.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool ability to put on a honk. Like a 5-mana 3/5 is usually like a playable option for limited, but this ability is like strong.
Right, yes, because the ability to just make colorless mana as you need it for life.
Turning life into mana, that's not something we usually get to do in Magic. Like the fact that you only do it once per turn makes it pretty fair and balanced.
Right.
Sorry, but
Yeah, a deceptively useful ability.
yeah, no, this guy played quite a bit.
Alpha Protector. 2 and a white for a 1/4 human soldier ally with vigilance. There was, like, the black-white allies deck frequently wanted to tap a second ally to do things.
That's right. So a good cohort enabler here.
Yes, exactly. Vigilance is a shockingly useful ability.
Especially when you're being asked to tap later for something. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can still chip in for a little bit and then activate cohort.
Yeah, you wanted to play exactly 0 of these for every copy of for every copy of the 3-mana 1/4 flying vampire that just drained when they were tapped, because they were often in the same deck. So Alpha Protector was like the clear downgrade to that guy, but still kind of close. Same stats for mana and the ability to get some more damage in, you know.
Cinder Hellion, 4 and a red, gives you a 4/4 with trample, and an ability that reads, when Cinder Hellion enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to target opponent.
That was a reasonable curve topper in those red-green decks or black-red decks. I don't think any deck was strangely like this card looks really fine, right? But I don't know if there was a single deck in the format, like a single archetype from Oath of the Gatewatch Limited, that really wanted to play it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like
low pick, yeah.
Yeah, at 5, I think you're dealing with a lot of 5 toughness in this format as well.
Right.
Sweep Away, 2 and a blue, for an instant that reads, return target creature to its owner's hand. If that creature is attacking, you may put it on top of its owner's library instead.
Yeah, totally reasonable on summon effect with another piece of great art. Thanks, Winona Nelson.
Yeah, 100% adequate. It also, I remember this being a reasonable surge enabler.
Yes, yeah, it's a good surge on your opponent's turn enabler for sure.
Canopy Gorger.
There's a 5 toughness creature right there.
Yep, 4 and 2 green for a worm. That's it.
There were a lot of cards with words on them in this set, so you almost never played this guy because the ones with words on them are better. I got that from it's a quote from Antoine Rouel or maybe Oliver or Olivier Rouel, just reviewing. He like reviewed M11 draft or something in like 100 words, and it was just like, yeah, I had a game. My cards had words on them. My opponent's cards didn't have words on them, and the ones with words are better.
I mean, that is magic in a nutshell.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, it's really, really eloquent.
Slip through space. A 1 blue sorcery. Devoid. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card.
You've seen it on the pauper tables. Yeah, this card came to the rest of Magic through Oath of the Gatewatch. It's a regular popular casual card, and it was a great Surge enabler.
Oh, absolutely.
So you wanted these for the Surge deck.
Netcaster Spider. 2 and a green for a 2/3 spider with reach. Whenever Netcaster Spider blocks a creature with flying, Netcaster Spider gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this was pretty reasonable.
Yeah, super solid card. Not necessarily affiliated with any particular archetype. Pretty good in like the blue-green and black-green slow decks. And also it's a reprint from, I want to say Innistrad? This isn't the first printing of Netcaster Spider. Yeah. You remember, Paul? We've got our best people on it.
It was
Where are you from,
originally in Magic 2015.
Oh, neat.
Oh,
okay.
And it's also been in like Conspiracy and Iconic Masters, but it's the other.
Weird.
The
first printing was Magic 2015 core set, hey? Neat.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be from Innistrad. The artwork looks very Innistrad-y, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
core
it
set
might
is
be a
kind of
core
where
set
everything
card from
overlaps.
Innistrad. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. Neat.
It's Pegasi and giant spiders are don't mix very well. The Pegasus tends to be one of the targets that they always show for giant spiders.
Oh, no.
It's because they're so delicious. That horse meat.
Atris, no.
The spiders want it. All right, that's it for the comments.
Yeah, on to our first uncommon. Embodiment of Insight. 4 and a green for a 4/4 elemental. It has vigilance, and lands you control have vigilance. What an interesting bit of rules text. It also has a landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have target land you control become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land.
This is a really solid card.
Yep.
It might be the first pick. I'd probably prefer Isolation Zone so far, but this thing really hits your opponent. It was a weird little mini cycle. It wasn't a complete cycle, right? These embodiments. There was definitely a red one, and there was a green one, and like maybe there was a black one.
Was there a white one?
Maybe there was a white one. Okay, I think there weren't 5 though.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I definitely remember there being a blue one, but I can't recall what it did offhand.
Yeah.
Anyway, this had was this the first time where they said, you know, when a land becomes a creature, it just gets haste, so you don't have to
This
worry
might
about
have been where
like,
they started it. Yeah.
which basic you played this turn.
Particularly Koth of the Hammer. That's funny. Other parts of the embodiment elemental cycle. Nice work. Yeah.
Embodiment of Fury, right, was the red one, for
Right.
3 and a red.
Maybe it's just those two.
Yeah, there's just those two.
Right.
And then
Interesting.
these
I
guys. This guy was from.
That's from Tarkir, yeah.
Tarkir, yeah.
Yeah, different world.
So yeah, I guess they mainly turn up in the colors that saw large amounts of landfall.
Yeah,
in the
red
first
green
set.
landfall was like the archetype. Like that was the main landfall archetype.
But yeah, giving the land haste just makes things so much cleaner.
Yeah, so Koth of the Hammer had a bunch of judge calls regularly where like, you know, a person would play a land and then target it with Koth, and it was like super awkward because they would like target one of their mountains when they had 3 in play, and the opponent would say like, no, that's the one you played this turn, and then like, you know, the judge has to go like, well, was it the one you play this turn? And then that player goes, I don't know, and then the opponent goes, it was, and then you're like, as a judge, you're in a really awkward, stupid spot.
Yeah, where it's
So-
like once they hit the table, they're largely like indistinguishable.
Exactly.
Except for one of them has summoning sickness. If it becomes like it's not
becomes
something
a
that
creature, yeah.
that Magic players particularly get trained around.
Yeah, it was like an unfortunate part of the rules that just kind of came up as more things could turn things into turn lands into creatures. So they've done a pretty good job of like fixing it. And this might have been starting with Oath when they were like, okay, everyone, memo. If you turn a land into a creature, you better darn well give that land haste.
Next up, we have Malakir Soothsayer for 4 and a black. You get a 4/4 Vampire Shaman ally with Cohort, our first instance of Cohort. Cohort was, in particular, Cohort wanted you to tap it and another ally, another untapped ally you control. And this one's Cohort ability reads, you draw a card and you lose 1 life.
Pretty powerful ability.
The Phyrexian Arena, or being able to say no to a Phyrexian Arena is nice.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's optional each turn for Exterior. Well, the other thing is, like, if you had the pieces of the black-white ally deck, you were just, like, full of life points
Oh yeah, yeah.
galore. Like we didn't see Ondu Cleric, but that's like the main Ondu Cleric and Vampire Envoy are like the main sort of engine of that deck. And then this is kind of like the primo endgame spice where you can start out carding your opponent instead of just out lifing them.
Right, Vampire Envoy was the one we mentioned earlier, the 1/4 flyer with
I remembered
cohort
what it was
tap.
called.
Yeah, which gains you 1 life, and then Ondu Cleric was a bear.
It's
in
white
that
one
when
in
it
a
became
colorless, yeah.
tapped, it gained you 2 life.
It's cohort, so
okay.
it lets you tap. Yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry,
the
yes.
Envoy
Void
gains you a life
doesn't
whenever
have cohort.
it gets tapped, and then
Right.
also the cohort white creature just taps itself and another ally to gain you 2 life.
Right, so tapping Ondu Cleric, tapping Vampire Envoy with Ondu Cleric's cohort ability gains you 3 life.
Yeah, so if you get both those together, oh, it's not Ondu Cleric, my bad. Ondu War Priest, maybe.
I can see the card art now. It's a human
Yeah.
holding a sword with a lot of force.
There we go,
wielding.
War
Yeah.
Cleric, Ondu War Cleric, the war of gaining even slower life than Ondu Cleric did. I don't know. Ondu Cleric's funny actually. He's a bit of like a combo with like the ally decks sometimes also play that one because if you get clones of him or whatever, you can gain just like a ridiculous amount of life in a short period of time.
Next up, we have Pyromancers Assault. For 3 and a red, you get an enchantment. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, Pyromancers Assault deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So, for a while, they were printing these kind of like red enchantments that encouraged you to do the thing.
Yes.
Right? Like, this reminds me a bit of...
The best one was the flashback one, right?
Yeah, Burning
Vengeance.
Burning Vengeance.
Yeah, that one actually was a deck.
Yes.
And then they kept trying to like
make Burning Vengeance again
Yeah, exactly.
work again. And
Yeah.
it just never seemed to pay off. Like,
Yeah.
Burning Vengeance was awesome.
They started making them cost 4 or 5, right? Like, because, Burning Vengeance, sometimes it was the 3-0 deck at the draft table. Like, it didn't ask too much of you since, like, playing flashback spells is just kind of good.
I tried to make Burning Vengeance work in Standard even, just
Sure.
by playing, like, Think Twice and Faithless Looting and... what was the red draw to discard
one at
one
random?
with the blue flashback cost?
Yeah. I want to say, like, it's not Insane Ravings, but it's
Yeah,
something
it's
like
definitely
that.
Ravings of some kind.
Ravings is in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also played that card in Standard a little bit, just in a deck with a bunch of Snapcaster mages. Maybe I was playing Burning Vengeance too? I don't think
Yeah,
so.
and then you had Snapcasters, and then, like, I think I played Augur of Bolus to look at the bottom 3 cards of my library. And
Desperate
Ravings, yeah.
There they are. There's that crazy lady inside that. It looks like the cart that takes you to prison. That's where it, or it takes you to the insane asylum, I guess.
But yeah,
Anyways, this one
Pyromancer
didn't
Assault
happen. Pyromancer Assault
never
was not a
worked.
card you were
Yeah.
afraid of on the other side of the table.
Well,
Yeah.
and they're being a little conservative about like Storm or whatever. Like rather than after the second spell, it just keeps triggering. That it only triggers. It can only ever trigger once
per turn.
Maximum
right.
1 shock per turn. Yeah.
Yeah, not terribly inspiring. Our rare for the pack is Eldrazi Obligator. For 2 and a red, you get a 3/1 Eldrazi with Devoid and Haste. And and another ability, when you cast Eldrazi Obligator, you may pay 1 and a colorless. If you do, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, and it gains haste until end of turn. So this is a lot like a card I'm actually running in my deck over here.
Perfect. What a segue.
Yeah, no, smooth.
This card's pretty strong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The ability to just like active treason one of your opponent's creatures and on a body that gets haste
Yeah,
can
3/1
very
haste for
dramatically
3
swing a match.
is like a kind of almost basically playable card on its own. So putting another really powerful ability on top of it is nice. This is like not the only card from this set to come to Modern, but probably the most recent one. Just like the last card that kind of made it into. Oh, we got a really nice swamp too. I really like.
Yeah.
I forgot that these
We got
packs
the-
also
the
had the
Young
full art
Park
swamp.
swamp.
From the first Innistrad set. It's
the reprint.
the one that survived.
Chase
'cause
reprint.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think our first pick might be the Soothsayer or the Isolation Zone.
It like
Those
Isolation
two
Zone is
are
just
embodiment of insight, I think, or the rare. The rare is quite good if you want to be in.
Isolation Zone is not splashable, so you're also cutting white, I believe, if you take the Isolation Zone, if that is a thing that you trust the other people in your pod to pay much attention
I think
to.
Isolation Zone is the safest pick, and the one with the highest power potential is the embodiment. Yeah,
But I do like the Soothsayer
the Soothsayer is great.
and the embodiment. There's a couple of interesting cards
You
here.
kind of like can't play the Soothsayer unless you're pretty committed to allies. So you can't necessarily hope it wheels, but you it feels weird picking it first.
Well, yeah, like the person to your left who first picked Vampire Envoy is super excited to see the Soothsayer.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your deck.
Okay.
So I was just gonna say, as a side note, looking at these the Oath cards, now looking back on this set and in constructed formats, especially the more sort of eternal formats like Highlander or whatever, do you think the Devoid like increases the value of a card in general, or decreases it, or does it basically not matter? Like, like a 3/3 for 3 versus like a 3/3 for 3 vanilla versus a 3/3 for 3 with Devoid. Like, do you care which one you're playing, or does it really, like, does the cases where it matters are very, very seldom?
So my answer to this is kind of the one I already gave. First and foremost, I just don't like it because it causes judge calls that tend to be awkward. But I don't know, from a play standpoint, it comes up occasionally that it matters. Like there's some interactions with a thing looking for a color. It's like I play Ugin in a lot of decks, so if you have if Ugin doesn't kill the Eldrazi, right, it doesn't exile them with his minus, so that can be relevant.
I remember once seeing blanking of all things a Sultai Charm with a Devoid creature somehow. Because Sultai Charm
kill
is
a monocolored creature. Right.
It seems like it's almost never bad for you.
Well, there's
it
Force of
can
Will and
be.
Green Sun Zenith. Those two come to mind, right? So, like, if you have a creature that costs blue mana but doesn't pitch to Force of Will, that comes up in Highlander. And then Green Sun Zenith, I don't know, trying to find there's like a Color of the Claw that's a Devoid creature, so you can't go get that one, although you wouldn't want to do that anyway.
But like if you're getting World Smasher or whatever it's called, the enormous green one.
Right. World Breaker.
World Breaker, I don't think that sees any Highlander play.
Not that I know of, yeah. But it's like there are some cards that care about colored permanence, know. So I think for me it's more of a hindrance probably most of the time. But it's definitely close. Like it's definitely close to not mattering because the main thing you do, the main reason that you care about color is because it's associated with mana cost, right? Like if a card is a certain color, you can or cannot cast it in your deck.
Well, yeah, and I think mainly what Devoid would wind up doing is surprising both players.
Yeah, right. Exactly, and that's like what the judge calls usually are, right? Where it's like it's 2 turns and someone's thinking about their game, and then they call the judge. And they're like, "I did this thing that was wrong. I'm sorry, I was confused."
But like there were some interesting decks in this set. I really enjoyed surprise. I really enjoyed the blue-black Eldrazi deck.
Oh yeah. The like ingest based one. Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, they just wanted to play Stormcrows and the uncommon in this. Wasn't the
Mind Shriek or Mind Flayer, Mind
Shrieker,
Mind Rider, something.
Yeah,
I really like that card. I think I got 2 of them in my pool. That's the archetype I played at the GP Vancouver.
Oh yeah,
that was limited for the set. I didn't make day 2, but I thought my deck was really good. It was just like I had a lot of mana sinks like that one, and then I had the Essence Depleter, and my deck was fun to play.
There was like a 2/4 common flyer in blue that whenever you played a colorless,
right, it would mill them.
Yeah, and then I also in one of my decks I had the 2/1 flyer that you could bounce back to your hand.
Oh, okay.
Was it just a 1/1 flyer? It was definitely an Eldrazi. It was colorless for blue, and it was whatever, a flash creature with flying, but it had an ability to bounce back to your hand, and I'd be like, aha, I'm bouncing it, and my opponent would be like, gain 12 life, kill you,
right?
And I'm like, bounce my thing, mill you too.
Nice.
But it made me happy.
Melter.
Mind Melter. There
Sorry,
we go.
I couldn't remember your name, little buddy. Yeah, this guy was super fun. 3 mana 2/2 can't block, and then for
or can't be blocked.
Can't be blocked. Sorry, yeah, can't be. That's what I meant to say. And then for 4, you can make your opponent exile a card of their choice from their hand. Pretty sweet.
All right. Well,
that's not like a card you're playing. Sorry. You got a card like Eldrazi Obligator.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you very much, Cassie13, for that pack. But the card that I run in my Highlander deck that is much like Eldrazi Obligator, but is not Eldrazi Obligator, smooth, Cameron.
So smooth.
Is Zealous Conscripts.
Nice.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about... this is something that if you watch any of our other streams, I've been on about for a couple of months. And the question that I've been trying to ask myself and get a handle on is what makes something challenging, right? What makes something hard or difficult, right? In video games, a lot of the time you talk about like, well, what difficulty level do you want to play on? and a lot of the time playing on higher difficulty is about setting an interesting challenge for yourself, where you have these constraints that limit what you're able to do or what you're able to play. And I always enjoyed, as I called it, learning on hard mode.
Okay.
Where you set up yourself with maybe a disadvantage, or maybe just kind of like an overly complex thing that kind of forces you to learn everything at once.
Right.
And I don't think it's necessarily a good strategy, but it's one that I commonly fall back on when I'm trying to dive into something new.
Okay, yeah, you regularly, when you're trying something new, you want to just have all the information thrown at you at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean,
that's partly your learning style, you think?
Yeah, partly my learning style, because I think it keeps me engaged.
Okay.
And it quite frequently leads to frustration, which anyone who's watched my home streams will be able to tell you. But it's also something that allows my constantly distracted attention, always affords it like something to latch onto.
Right.
But which is to say that I'm playing kind of a weak deck in our Highlander League.
Okay. So for you to like try to pull this back to the main theme here, it's like for you, you know, this makes sense, but it's like something is harder if the pieces you're working with, like in your deck, if the controls that you have on the game are just weaker. You're just playing a character who's handicapped essentially in the game, right? Okay. So is Zealous Conscripts a handicap? Is that how does that tie in?
Well, for 5 mana, you get a 3/3 body.
Right,
with haste, and it has this Mark of Mutiny effect, or this
threatened effect.
Yeah, threatened effect.
But it can target any permanent.
Right.
So that either player controls.
Yeah, I mean, 5 mana for a 3/3 haste that grabs a thing. Okay, how is this good? And it's very good in my Aristocrats deck.
Okay.
And Aristocrats is the strategy where you play a lot of synergistic creatures that feed off each other, quite literally. So the deck is named after a standard deck from Innistrad
Scars?
Innistrad Scars block?
Is that right?
Maybe?
No. Return to Ravnica.
Innistrad Return to Ravnica.
Original Innistrad Return to Ravnica.
And the reason it's called Aristocrat
Cartel Aristocrat
is because of the presence of 2 cards, Cartel Aristocrat and Falconwrath Aristocrat. And thus the name, which borrows from an old stand-up comedy routine called, what do you call that act? The Aristocrats, which is a complete non sequitur. So you play these creatures that...
More on that on our late night stream, right?
Yes, yeah. You get Falconwrath Aristocrat, or let's talk about Cabal Aristocrat. Cabal Aristocrat is a 2/2 human advisor for white and black. Cartel, sorry. What did I say?
Cabal, which hopefully we'll get in Modern Horizons.
Oh, man. Cabal Aristocrat would be amazing.
Let's talk about Cabal Aristocrat instead.
Yeah. No. Whenever you sacrifice something, name a card.
Yeah.
Your opponent reveals their hand.
If they have it in hand, they lose 2 life. Yeah.
Ooh.
Exile this from your graveyard.
We'll get Cabal Therapist.
High five the closest member of LRR. Yeah.
White and black, you get a 2/2 human advisor with a line of text that reads, sacrifice another creature. Cartel Aristocrat gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. So, blocks really well, can swing through most of your opponent's board pretty well.
Sometimes requires 2 activations, but yeah.
Yeah, and gives you a sack outlet. Now,
For no mana. This is how they used to make sacrifice outlets back in the day, kids.
Yeah, absolutely. The free ones are the best ones. So you can quite easily imagine a situation where you have Cartel Aristocrat on the battlefield. You play Zealous Conscripts, you grab your opponent's best creature, you swing with everything, and then you feed your opponent's best creature to Cartel Aristocrat. Right?
Either before or after
combat.
damage.
Yeah, depending on how they block, or depending on if your opponent's at 2, you just feed it directly to the Aristocrat.
Okay, so I understand the dream so perfectly now. I understand it.
Yeah.
So why is it challenging?
Well, because I don't have a lot of money.
Okay.
Fundamentally, right? What I've been told over and over again by Highlander veterans is that the Aristocrats deck in Highlander is very strong.
Okay.
It does work. It works quite well. It's difficult to pilot. One of the challenges with it is that a lot of the sack outlets work in slightly different ways and trigger on slightly different things. For example, you get cards that want to...
Here's another one while he's looking for a third. Just the second Aristocrat we talked about has a similar ability. It says sacrifice a creature. Falcon Wrath Aristocrat's indestructible until end of turn. But also, if a human was sacrificed, it gets a +1/+1 counter on Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. So this one, just like Cartel Aristocrat, lets you sacrifice a creature for no mana. But it also asks you this extra question of just like, well, are you going to be sacrificing humans? Because you might want to sacrifice them to me instead of Cartel Aristocrat or, Carrion Feeder or whoever else you've got lying around.
Right. Yeah. This is one of those abilities that's never been, keyworded or anything, and so it's always sort of similar but slightly different on every time it's put forward.
And I don't think they're going to keyword this ability. Like I don't.
No,
think that,
it doesn't need to be. But just so you just have to be really you're sort of halfway through some line of play and you're like, wait, no, this isn't that guy. Crap.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You've just got to be like
gone wrong.
You've got to be vigilant about your sacrifice outlets.
I mean,
right?
for instance, this guy can sack to himself, whereas the cartel can't.
Right. It says another creature. That's super relevant too.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing that one.
Falcon Wrath Aristocrat can dodge O-Ring.
I already punted on this podcast.
So I want to look at 3 cards here that all have different effects and work in slightly different ways on death triggers or something else. Okay. You have Blasting Station as one of the cards. It is a 3-mana artifact with a line of text that reads tap and sacrifice a creature. Blasting Station deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Whenever a creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station.
Okay.
Right? That's pretty straightforward, right? This will ping something. You can activate it in response to your opponent playing a creature. I was once able to kill Surge on a... is it Freyalise?
That's a Planeswalker?
Yeah, a Planeswalker that when you ultimate her, she returns a bunch of... how does it work?
She draws a whole bunch of cards if you ultimate her.
It might not be Freyalise. It may have
Freyalise
been...
destroys an enchantment or makes a land
It was another one of those Commander exclusive green Planeswalkers that makes 5/3 lands.
It's a creature. Titania. So when she enters the battlefield, you get to return...
totally wrong.
No, you're totally close. There are 2 Commander exclusives from the same deck.
Right.
And they're both legendary green permanents.
There we go.
So you get a land back from your graveyard when she enters the battlefield, and then I guess they reprinted that deck in the anthology. Cool. And then whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard, you make a 5/3. So it's good with Wasteland, and then it's like a combo with Zuran Orb.
So I was able to kill Surge on Blasting Station activations because it put a bunch of ETB triggers on the stack, and then you can activate in response to it.
Right.
And that felt cool, and I was able to keep that straight in my head. Probably because I wasn't running anything like Goblin Sharpshooter at the same moment.
Right.
For 2 and a red, Goblin Sharpshooter is a 1/1 Goblin with a couple of lines of text. Goblin Sharpshooter doesn't untap during your untap step. Oh, that's a bummer.
That seems not great. Yeah.
Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap Goblin Sharpshooter.
All right.
Okay. And tap and or it has an ability, tap, Goblin Sharpshooter deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So this will like machine gun down a board as long as things are dying.
Right.
Right. This will kill any number of X1s.
That's right.
And then untap when they die. Okay. Brain, we can keep these interactions straight. Something enters the battlefield, you activate Blasting Station, then you can shoot it. That'll untap the Sharpshooter. Blood Artist.
Okay.
1 in a black, classic card, awesome card from this is from Dark Ascension.
Right.
For an 0/1
Innistrad
vampire.
block. Yeah.
When Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Cam tried to say you control because some of the other similar cards...
the more recent ones have been you control. For example,
Judith is a good example, right?
Yeah, Judith hits non-tokens.
Okay.
Judith cares
it's
about
only
non-tokens.
non-token creature control. Well, that's cool. We just jumped 2 steps forward, right?
Yeah.
So there's Blood Artist is kind of like the original Blood Artist, and then these other Blood Artists that have come later said, okay, only when your own creatures die, not when your opponent creatures die, do you get to make your opponent lose life. And then Judith, the most recent piece of the puzzle here, just says only when your own non-token creatures die will she deal some damage.
Then we also have Grim Haruspex. For 2 and a black, you get a 3/2 human wizard. It has morph. It unmorphs for black. That's sometimes useful, I suppose.
You could cast a colorless creature instead of a black creature.
Ooh. Yeah. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card.
Right. Also cares about tokens or not.
Outpost Siege. 3 and a red for an enchantment. As Outpost Siege enters the battlefield, choose cons or dragons. The relevant one frequently is dragons. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to target creature or player.
So yeah, we see a lot of different variations on the same themes.
And maybe I'm just complicating my life too much. But
No, I feel like these should all be in the same deck. Seems right.
Zulaport Cutthroat, another one of these effects from Battle for Zendikar block. 1 and a black, you get a 1/1 human rogue ally. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Okay. So this time he only counts the creatures you control.
Yes,
He's
but
like
he
the
will trigger on tokens.
Right.
I mean, to me, this is one of the more interesting things about Highlander, as a format. When you have 100 singleton cards, when you're trying to put together a deck, there is that interesting aspect of you can't just do 4 of all the best stuff. You start getting into kind of the more esoteric versions of a particular mechanic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. It gets the example Alex always uses is Sarcomancy when he's building zombies.
Sure.
Right. Because you quite frequently want to just go through Gatherer and search for a creature subtype zombie.
Right.
Right. Or creature type zombie.
Right. And you would miss Sarcomancy. If
misses
you did that.
this card called Sarcomancy, which is a 1 black enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield.
So this is like another Carnophage.
Yes.
Right?
Right. But it's the kind of thing that it's an example of how subtly different templating makes Gatherer searches suddenly just so much more of a pain to do.
Right. Yeah. You really just need like a shopkeep or something to help you with the Gatherer search.
Hissing
Or
Iguana
to look at deck lists.
for
I guess,
another
right?
pseudo blood artist effect is 2 and a red for a 3/1. So this thing can swing in.
Yeah, it's got power.
Meaningfully. Whenever another creature dies, you may have Hissing Iguana deal 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So
Player or planeswalker.
Planeswalker,
right?
yeah.
It was originally
just pings players.
just players. Yeah.
Yes. So again, subtly different. This doesn't drain. This pings.
Yeah.
Which can be different.
It doesn't count itself either.
Yeah, it doesn't count itself, but it counts creatures your opponents control.
Right. So there's all these different ways that the same board state could play out depending on which pieces you have, right? Like,
Right.
say your opponent has, a Sorin Markov and, 2 black mana open, and they have 4 mana rocks tapped, and they have 3 cards in hand, and it's your turn, and they have 3 loyalty on Sorin, and you're like, well, I have a wildly different set of options available to me depending on which attempt at playing the same cards in my deck I've drawn, right? Because
Right.
the Iguana, the Iguana, the Blood Artist, the Zulaport Cutthroat, and the Blasting Station, Judith and Sharpshooter are all kind of trying to represent the same Blood Artist slot in your deck, right? Like
Right.
if this was a standard deck tech, instead of all this different card art, you'd have 4 Blood Artists.
Yes, 4
right?
blood artists and then maybe 2 other.
Sure. Or
Other
just
of the
4
blood
blood
artists,
artists because
yeah.
you only have 60 cards in your deck, so instead of 6 you'd have 4, right?
Right.
And it's there's so many less words. So this is a challenging thing about Highlander in general, but maybe about this deck in particular too, because if you're playing, blue-green taking turns, sure, Rampant Growth does something different from Farseek, but barely, and it doesn't take up. It's not a permanent. It goes and
Right.
finds the same permanent, right? They both go and find an island, and put it into play tapped, and then you have the same island in play tapped. Or even if you want to get more complicated, say Demonic Tutor and Grim Tutor and Rhystic Tutor all do something different. Sure, they do, but then you get to resolve them and go get the same Black Lotus out of your deck, right?
Well, where it gets really interesting is when you introduce cards like Hangerback Walker.
All right.
And say you have, even if you just have 2 of these effects in play at once, you
Right.
play Hangerback Walker. Say you've got, I don't know, Blasting Station.
So you had enough mana to play Hangerback for 4, or what? What do you think? You just played it for 2?
But like you say you play Hangerback for even 2, just because we only need 1 token.
All right.
Right?
We've spent 2 mana. We have a Hangerback Walker with 1/1/1 counter on it.
And pick any 2 arbitrarily, right? But suddenly you can imagine situations where it gets quite important for your sequencing, because Hangerback Walker is a real creature that makes tokens when it dies. So what order do you sacrifice things? You need a more complicated board state than this, and that quite easily happens, right? But say you've got 1 sack outlet, and you can go for the kill this turn, you're pretty sure, but you need to be able to sacrifice your Blood Artist and your Hangerback Walker and then the token in a way that maximizes the amount of damage you're doing, all the while interacting with things like, Blasting Station or Sharpshooter activations or triggers.
Yeah, I mean, it starts getting into that thing, which tends to come up sometimes, or with Highlander, where I always think of like the puzzles in magazines, right, where it's like you have 1 turn to win. This is your board state. This is the other board state. What do you do?
The puzzling.
Yeah. I remember in Scry magazine once reading one of those articles where it was like, fortune smiled on you this turn and you drew regrowth. Right. Here's the contents of your graveyard. Here's the board state. What do you regrow to kill your opponent this turn?
And it's like, so, for instance, like I can imagine that if, say, for instance, you had a Demonic Tutor, and you go, okay, Demonic Tutor, which of those, half dozen Blood Artist-ish cards or sacrifice outlets or whatever you want to go for, you got to know a lot about not only your own deck and its what capabilities, what cards you've already played that game, etc., but also about the meta, what your opponent is probably playing, what stuff, what... If your opponent is going to have a lot of tokens, maybe you don't go and get Judith, or if whatever.
Right, like on creature heavy boards, you want to get your Blood Artist first, because that also triggers off your opponent's creatures dying. Right. But maybe if they're on control, then Judith is just the correct one, because she also buffs your team and lets you swing in for maybe those couple of extra points of damage.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that this deck can operate.
I find that on one hand, like, it makes my mind swim, but on my good days, I find it really pleasing.
Okay.
Right.
And it's nice, like, it's not always just, go for the combo. Like, whenever as soon as you have a chance, you go for the whatever Thespian Stage, Darkest Depths, and just do that.
Right.
And it's just how many different ways can I get to that one combo? It's all sorts of different ways of going about what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. This deck doesn't exactly try to assemble an A plus B. It's more of a synergy deck where you might get into a position where you have basically a combo, like you see that after a few turns and you've attacked your opponent down to 12, you can just spend 1 more turn putting a counter on Hangerback, and then you can sack your whole board to win, and that feels like a combo, but it always just gets there organically by putting the various pieces together. Okay, I want to return if I can, because I remembered you said that like one of the things you find challenging has to do with the fact that you don't have a lot of money. So is that just that you're playing still a subpar version of this deck? Is that what you meant?
Well, yes. The version of the deck that I'm trying to build towards is the 4-color version.
Okay.
Because this deck does really well when it's able to run green.
Right.
And not necessarily for the reasons you might immediately think of, like powerful creatures like... what was the 5/3 that when it dies you get a 3/3?
Titania. Thragtusk?
Thragtusk. Objectively very powerful card.
Both seem like pretty good stress creatures, yeah.
The winningest version of this deck that runs green does not run Thragtusk.
Okay.
It runs green for mana dorks. Because all this deck wants to top deck are more homies to throw into the wood chipper.
Sure.
Right? So
we don't want to spend 5 on 2 dudes, we want to spend 1 on 1 dude.
Right? Yeah. And what you want to do is like ideally, turn 1 play is something like Elves of Deep Shadow, or Birds of Paradise, or Noble Hierarch, or Deathrite Shaman.
Right.
And frequently those cards stop being good in late game, but when you
not in this deck, right?
Yeah, when you can just feed Avacyn's Pilgrim to Falconwrath Aristocrat, that suddenly feels like a much more live draw later on. And I find that to be quite an interesting deck building challenge as well. When I'm looking at, I mean, I have now just kind of looked at the winningest decks and realized it sure is 3 Moxen.
Right. Yeah.
So we're probably not going to get there, but I think there's a lot of interesting, well, speaking with Jer and Ben Wheeler, they have said that the players who run the winningest Aristocrats deck have agreed that there's probably about two flex slots.
Oh, really? Yeah.
In the correct deck list where you can run a card that is different from what they are running.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's a pretty tight deck list that where there are best in slot cards.
Right.
For each role, and maybe you get something that printed that is a bit better. Maybe Hunted Witness is better than Martyr of Dusk.
Sure.
Right.
Seems like 2 bodies for 1 mana.
Yeah, for 1 mana instead.
Or sorry,
of 2 mana.
Martyr of Dusk is 2, right? That's
yes,
the one
because
for
it's
the
a
clone,
2/1, and really that point of power doesn't make a huge difference to you.
Not as much as the point of mana, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And these synergistic decks are always kind of interesting because you have to find the balance between the aristocrats, which are the cards that want to eat other creatures, the cards that the blood artist effects that gain a benefit when a creature you control dies or when a creature dies, and then the fodder for them.
Right.
The creatures
99%.
Yeah, the creatures with persist or undying or that make a token when they die.
Right.
Or even things like
Or
Perilous
that
Mirror.
have a death effect, yeah.
Yes, cards with a death effect. And like the great one is Mog War Marshal.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone
All
loves
the
Mog
things.
War Marshal.
Yeah, exactly.
3 bodies on 1 card. Oh my god.
For 2 mana? Yeah.
And there are also the cards that just kind of have a useful effect. Like I'm gonna give Mesmeric Fiend a shot.
Great. Yeah.
Because it has the templating where if you sacrifice it with Mesmeric Fiend for 1 and a black, you get a horror for 1/1. I think.
Yeah.
This is a Jap.
Maybe it's a nightmare? I don't know. Yeah.
This is a Chinese version I found.
Anyways,
in
it's
a pile.
It's a 1/1 for 2 mana.
Yeah, and when it enters the battlefield, you look at an opponent's hand and exile a card with it. When Mesmeric Fiend dies, or leaves the battlefield, I should say,
Right.
Return that card to their hand. But if you sacrifice it with the first ability on the stack, it dies. The second ability goes on the stack first. That resolves. It has nothing exiled because the first ability hasn't resolved yet. And then you just blow something out of their hand forever.
That's right.
And you've gotten a death trigger.
Right. Yeah. Assuming you've got a sacrifice outlet, because you need to be able to sacrifice this with the enter the battlefield effect on the stack. But yeah, then you get to spend 2 mana for what usually most decks are just trying to do this for is just kind of permanently Thoughtseize your opponent.
Right.
But your deck obviously gets a whole bunch out of a creature dying sometimes. So
well, hopefully that's the plan, and I'm also just running Thoughtseize.
right. So if you had the like best version or the 98 cards plus your 2 favorite extra cards or whatever, with the green mana dorks in it, would all of these complicated decisions still be there, or do you think then if you played that deck, it'd be like getting to play this deck but on training wheels?
Oh, I think it would make it deliciously more complex.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay,
because
it'd be
then
more
you,
complicated.
Well, because then you also have to think of like what creatures am I going to activate for mana this turn, right? Like, is it better to swing in? What's the math look like? Because
all these mana dorks mostly have a point of power as well.
well,
right?
yeah, hopefully, and sometimes they can also pick up Grafted War Gear if
Right,
you
okay.
need to.
Is that
right?
another one in your deck?
It is.
It's kind of an interesting one. Grafted Warrior is a pretty fun card that a lot of Highlander decks play and is like your favorite thing to see if you're playing Mindslaver, but
Yeah, because it just allows you to eliminate your opponent's entire board.
Maybe by the time they've Mindslavered you, they can go right ahead and sacrifice all your creatures and you're still going to win.
Yeah, because then, suddenly it's your opponent's problem. They've got to figure out what order things have to be sacrificed in. Grafted War Gear is a 3-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. Oh, okay, that seems pretty linear. Whenever Grafted War Gear becomes unattached from a creature, sacrifice that creature. Equip 0.
That's pretty good.
So you can just buzzsaw through your entire board with Grafted War Gear.
Right. Well, you
And-
got to get to one creature, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Your entire board except one blood
Except
artist.
for one, the
Yeah.
last blood artist who's just standing there, suddenly with enormous arms going,
Suddenly
what
being
just
3/3.
happened?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, as Alex says, this is kind of like the ultimate get 'em card,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Where like this is a statement of intent.
Yeah, you definitely want to be attacking and also sacrificing creatures when you play this card. So it sounds to me like for you, what makes things challenging is playing a deck that like the hard mode of this deck is that you have all of these puzzle pieces that you need to put together, right? And like you know what each of them do, but every time you play a game, it's sort of unclear what order they're supposed to come down, or it depends on your opponent and like
Right. There's many different configurations.
you don't
that this
have
deck
like
can
you
operate
don't have
in.
a super clear like linear. You know, if we're to bring it back to deck techs, oftentimes we talk about like a critical turn in a deck tech or what that's supposed to look like, or like the ideal draw.
Right.
And with your deck, it's kind of just like, well,
Yeah, it's like, well, what do you have in hand? What life total is your opponent at? What are they likely to have? Because you're honestly trying to play a warped but still fair game of Magic the Gathering, where
Right.
you are casting creatures and then crashing in and reducing your opponent's life total to 0 without doing things like taking extra turns or generating arbitrarily large amounts of mana or storm count.
right. Yeah, you do want to cast creatures, attack with creatures, sacrifice them with Blood Artist and play if necessary, right? Like that is basically the linear plan. It's just
Right.
it looks more complicated than that every time you play a game.
Right, because there's all these subtly different modes, and there's a lot of like, tantalizing complexity here that I really enjoy, and I'm not good at. If you've ever watched me play this game on any of our Highlander streams, you see me just struggling with it, and I want to be good at it.
Okay.
Because I think it's an incredibly satisfying deck to be good with.
Right.
Because the lines can be very complex.
It's kind of like Storm, but with creatures,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like what we've talked through is basically no less complicated than just figuring out what order to go tutor for things in like a Lotus Storm deck. So, and that's like pretty satisfying when you win with it, I guess. But this is like, yeah, also quite cool.
Yeah, and I'm also not saying that this is hard mode as a way of disparaging other decks or in any way kind of trying to inflate myself, but just acknowledging that there's a lot going on here that works in ways that are just different enough that give you pause and try to make you think about things and reward you for having planned things out correctly. Anyway, I'm trying to put together the green version is my point,
Cool.
I guess.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Because, I also like winning games.
Well,
Though to be fair, Alex has, I think he's 5-0'd out Highlander Knights with a Mardu Aristocrats deck. So it is possible.
yeah, I mean, it's not like you're playing bad cards in the place of the green cards, but one of the things in Highlander and like all the Eternal formats is you want to be just like starting your game on turn 1.
Yes. Yeah, getting out, being one turn faster.
Yeah,
right.
it's like-
is the difference between like my most recent example is in Modern,
Right.
where Dovin Bond suddenly makes, or the addition of Dovin Bond to the Goblin Electromancer deck suddenly made Gifts Ungiven a playable card in Storm because you could play it on turn 3,
Right.
instead of having to wait until turn 4, and the difference is huge.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you also get to Gifts Ungiven on turn 3 if you have an Electromancer in play, right? But
Right,
it's like
but
an
like
extra copy of
the
it or whatever,
additional
yeah.
consistency
Right.
of being able to do that is
Yeah, that's
very
cool.
powerful and made all the difference for that deck.
Right.
So being able to get out and suddenly like running a Mox out and a Mana Dork suddenly makes Falcon Wrath Aristocrat a turn 2 play.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And that's great, right? Obviously, that's more the kind of powerful magic we're hoping to see when we're watching games of Highlander. Yeah, I kind of think of our format as like you want your turn 1. I mean, if possible, to include Moxes, but Moxes aside, it's like you want your turn 1 to kind of include either Birds of Paradise, Thoughtseize, or Force Spike, like something like that. Like you either want to be, I mean, Ponder is acceptable, but not great. Like it's like Ancestral Vision, Thoughtseize, Birds of Paradise. Like those are like the 3 main avenues.
Right, like
and
the
then
very-
Goblin Guide. Just
The very powerful declarations of intent.
yeah, just like make sure that you're moving your game forward one step.
Yeah,
I didn't
the-
mention a white card, which is probably why I never play white and don't even understand.
Yeah, what is the
The white
ideal
card,
one?
I think Adam, if 2017 Highlander champ, Adam were here, he'd probably just tell me it's Ancient Tomb. You know, like
Yeah,
that's the white card, right? Like,
yeah, or maybe something like Ether Vial.
Sure, yeah.
Is Ether Vial the
yeah.
ideal turn 1 white play?
Yeah, so it's like the red and white decks, like the core ones, or like the monocolored ones, they're mostly just like trying to put creatures on the battlefield and attack them immediately. And then like the green decks are ramping up mana, which I'm the most familiar with, or the black decks that are trying to disassemble your hand, or the blue decks that are trying to like outcard you or disrupt you. They have their choice. But you want to, the point I'm trying to make is that you just want to be making sure you're doing it on turn 1. And so the green really helps you do that. So
Absolutely.
hopefully you'll feel like you're kind of caught up and you have a bit of breathing room against these other decks. I'm sure that in the league are already doing that, right? They're already doing unfair things really quickly.
And the fact that this deck can apparently hang with those.
Oh yeah, it's a real deck. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not just like a hobby deck, even though I guess I am approaching this as a hobby deck, like one of those decks that there are kind of multiple modes that you can approach Highlander in.
Yeah.
One where you have like an enormous collection and you kind of think about what you feel like sleeving up this week.
Right.
And the other mode where you have the deck that you enjoy, and you kind of incrementally improve it over time, right? You foil things out, or you substitute in just a slightly better card over time.
Well, I think this deck for sure, but I think also Storm just started out as a pet deck for like a couple players, and like one of them just stuck with it, and now it's kind of the boogeyman,
right?
Or
right,
like one
right.
of them in the format.
Yeah, one of the driving forces behind pointless changes.
Yeah. So whatever your favorite deck is in Canadian Highlander, it might be the next real deck. Probably everyone you talk to will say like, no, it's a worse version of this other deck, but and they might be right too. But like, definitely, at least it's worth noting that like a bunch of the decks that we think of as best decks today, not all of them, some of them started off as like obviously good decks, but a bunch of the decks started out as pet decks. So,
well,
yeah,
I mean, hopefully I'm able to post better results with this as I become more familiar with it.
That will definitely help.
Hopefully, because I've been playing it for 2 years, so any moment now, really, fingers crossed. Any moment now, I'll finally figure it out. The light will come on, and all my
you said
sequencing,
more familiar.
yeah, the sequencing will become just clear for me. The clouds will part, and I'll just kill everyone, and then people will pick me up and lift me on their shoulders and carry me around the store while everyone cheers, right?
So to reiterate, what Cameron finds difficult is something easy.
Absolutely, a story of my life, really.
Yeah, the satisfaction of making something difficult feel easy. That's like what drives us to go after difficult things, right?
The best compliment I ever got on a stream, or the best compliment, on a stream. I'm going to compartmentalize that and not make myself feel bad by saying that this is the best compliment I've ever gotten. The best compliment I've ever gotten streaming was I was playing Dark Souls and someone new came in and said, wait, isn't this game supposed to be hard?
Nice.
This looks really easy. And I was like, yes, finally got there.
Nice. Good. Well, hey, this Friday night, just got to do the same thing.
Yeah, just got to run it back. Hopefully, I put in an order for
or
some
last
cards.
Friday night if you're watching this, yeah.
I put in an order for some cards, and Card Kingdom got them out the door lightning fast, and then into the cumbersome hands of UPS, who has, as of 10 days ago, transferred them to local postal service.
Yikes. Okay, so yeah, if you tuned in for last Friday night, you either did or didn't see Cameron with his new cards that he ordered in the mail from cardkingdom.com.
But cardkingdom.com definitely got them out the door very quickly and have been very good with their customer service, and I really like them. And that is our segue of saying this podcast has been brought to you by the very kind people over at cardkingdom.com. Cardkingdom.com. Pay them so they pay us.
A kingdom of cards.
A kingdom of cards.
That you will pay for. And so will we, because that's what we do.
Cardkingdom.com. Actually a member of the mercantile class.
Cardkingdom.com.
Not actual aristocracy, rather merchants.
You're curious who's gaining the one life when your creatures die.
Yes.
Go to the kingdom and find out.
They're lovely people. We like them very much. We know them IRL, and they're pretty good to us, and hopefully they're good to you too. So if you go to cardkingdom.com/LRR, that enters our affiliate code, lets them know that we sent you, and hopefully you find their business as satisfactory as we do.
And if you ask for a button when you buy some cards, you might get one that says auto tap, concede, like I do whenever I'm casting Consult the Guild Gates, or whatever the 3-mana enchantment is, where it's like if you have gates and not gates in play, then you need to tap the right gates, and if you don't, then you don't get to draw cards, and
And you
Arena
just-
laughs at you.
Yeah, and you just drag something onto the battlefield that you're like, oh, I guess I'll play out this 2/3 this turn just to develop my board a bit, and suddenly all the wrong things are tapped, and you're like,
Yeah.
Arena.
So you can have that button and feel just like me.
And it has also been brought to you by the by you, the viewer, over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Way to go.
You did
We
this.
thank you very much
Thanks
from the
very
bottom
much.
of our hearts. And so until next week, I've been Cameron.
And I've been Nelson.
Catch you in the future.